just a moment, if you would. My name is Daniel Anderson. I'm an account manager here with Workamajig, and today we're going to be doing a webinar session on traffic and resourcing. Primarily, we're going to be looking at these three modules here. We're going to take a little bit of a look at the project level as well. It kind of makes sense to start there first and then feed into this here. And today's session is really to provide you an overview of how these things work and how they fit into the greater context of Workamajig as a whole here. So we'll be staying relatively top level for how these functions work here. There are some kind of more sophisticated functions that I'll kind of hint at a little bit here, but typically these sessions will kind of provide you an overview of the module in general and the workflow for how they're intended to operate within the scope of Workamajig in your current processes. And of course, you're more than welcome to follow up with your account manager if you want some more information or if you want to do a specific workflow-oriented training, excuse me. Now, I've got you all muted, so if you're wondering why you can't talk, that's why. I've got quite a few people here in this session, but you do have access to a chat. I'll try to leave a few minutes towards the end of the call for any questions that you have, but feel free to pop them in throughout the session here as well. Might just be easier to address them when they come up here, but of course, we're trying to get through kind of a couple of different modules here. So I'll do my best to leave a couple of minutes at the end of the session here, and you do have access to the chat there if you do want to pop in and ask a question. Now, for traffic and resourcing, again, the best place to start is typically at a project level here. And I'm going to make some assumptions that you're kind of familiar with the copying a project template and opening a project process in Workamajig. Our recommended process is to copy from pre-existing templates. So when you kind of select that option to add a new project, one of the questions we ask you is to add a template. There's several reasons for this, but from a traffic or resourcing side, one of the big benefits to having templates and having hourly allocations at the template level is you kind of have pre-packaged detail for your projects in terms of how long things typically take and what resources are needed to complete those tasks. So, among other things, one of what we're capturing is how many hours, you need a copywriter or a graphic designer for a particular task. And that really starts at the project level. So I'm going to kind of skip over templates for now. But again, one of the reasons we harp so much on having templates and having good templates with that hourly allocation detail is it makes that process consistent and seamless. If you have 90% of your projects with allocated hours at the schedule level, but 10% don't, you're kind of missing a big part of the picture for resourcing. You'll be able to kind of see the task that someone's assigned to, but not necessarily how long those things will take. And we're kind of looking at both. And Sandra, I see you raising your hand over there. Can you, if you got a question, can you pipe that into chat, please? And for now, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a project level. So just to kind of show what I'm referring to here, I've copied these projects from a template. I'm not really going to go down to that level, but really this is what we're talking. Yes, please go ahead and call in. You should see the option to call in towards the top of the Zoom application. Okay, so looking at a project level here, what we're looking at is this column in particular here is these assigned columns. There's other factors here too in terms of how long these tasks take and the typical plan start and complete dates that we're looking at. But Workamajig is taking all of the resourcing detail that we're feeding into those particular tools under the resourcing application from your project schedules, particularly from active projects. So anything that's in a estimating or pre-production phase that's not considered active won't necessarily be pulled into the resourcing modules in the system. So, we're looking at these plan start and complete dates using the number of days in predecessor. Workamajig kind of frames out those schedules for you. I get asked that question a lot for, why do my tasks move on my project, or why do the dates move on my project? And that's one of the big reasons. Number one, to kind of keep you from having to manually change all of this stuff in here anytime anything kind of goes a little bit sideways or goes a little bit wrong on your projects. But two, also to give you the most accurate resourcing detail to the moment. So, this task is slated to start on the 13th. We'll schedule it, we'll resource it that way. But if it doesn't actually start until the 15th or 16th, we'll kind of adjust or pivot and still show that there's these hours for these users or these resources needed. But but we'll show it kind of on the same realistic timeline here. So, we're pulling the detail from this level, looking at the tasks themselves. When we drill into the assigned column, we'll see both people and services that they're assigned to. Now, from a template level, we're normally passing over the services, and then we're assigning the specific individuals, and then the number of allocated hours for them. And I'm not sure why, we're splitting this task. That's why. But that's really where we're pulling this from. Yes, and everyone registered to the webinar. I believe we'll get a recording link sent out to you there as a follow-up. So I'll double check that and make sure that we get that to you after the call here. So again, don't want to spend too long here at the project level for where these pieces come from. I just wanted to at least show you when we're looking at actual hour detail or specific tasks within a time range, this is what we're looking at. Who's assigned, what service, and what planned start and complete dates are they assigned for those tasks. And the way that Workamajig handles these is it takes the number of hours. So in this instance, I have Candace assigned as an art and creative designer to this concept development task for 2 hours. And the duration for that task is 2 days. So Workamajig will take the number of hours you've allocated to a user or service and cut that time up evenly over the duration of the task. So a 2-day task, 2 hours, is going to say 1 hour a day on these 2 days. And of course, it will shift your schedule based off of the actuals for this project. So if it doesn't actually start until a day or two later, that's fine. We'll still adjust and show you the detail of that. Now, obviously, your users may not work that way, especially with tasks that get a little bit longer. If I have a 10-hour task over, 3 days or something like that, they may do the lion's share of the work on the first day or the last day of the plan dates, and that's perfectly fine. The resourcing systems will also adjust based off of that as well. So if a user works half of that time in the first day, we'll just say, okay, now there's only 5 hours left over the next 2 days. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the resource manager screens here. Look at the staff schedule, the traffic calendar, and the assignment management. Before they do that, I have a question here from Karen saying, is there a way to receive alerts if tasks have not been started or if a user goes over their allocated hours? That's actually kind of 2 different functions here. One for the tasks have not been started. There is a way to kind of have the system send reminders to the users themselves. And on your Project Manager Today page, mine might be a mess of details here, but you can also see some items on here as well for any assignments that are due but not done, or any projects in particular with schedule warnings. That would typically be the mechanism that we'd use. Oh, I cleaned some of that up here, but we typically use that mechanism. We'd say we have a due date for your project, and we're checking the planned start and complete date of every task in that project to make sure it's not finishing after that due date. So that's kind of one side of it. As a project manager, that would be your notice that there's something potentially awry. And from the user level, you have a way to also let a user know of their tasks on a particular date, or if they're starting something late, we can basically have the system send them an email. I'd follow up with your account manager about that one. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the staff schedule first here. This is probably the most widely utilized of the resourcing screens here. This leans heavily on the number of hours and duration for tasks, and it's basically going to show you by user and by role what everybody's working on in the agency. And you know what, pardon me for just a moment. Let me get a role in here real quick. Just to update this, we're going to add a task. It's going to be named New Task 1, and we're just going to go ahead and put in some account management time in here. So we're just going to say we need an account manager for something crazy, like 25 hours over the next 5 days. Again, just to throw something in here at a role level, all of mine are specifically assigned to users right now, so it makes it a little bit harder to see the split between them. But let me go ahead and add that time here. And what we'll see here on the staff schedule is we're going to get a breakout by users and by role, what everybody's working on in the agency. And by default, we look at 2 weeks, but you can expand or contract or take a look at a specific snapshot for a time period and this information here as well. But again, it's using that same resourcing calculation I just mentioned. We're cutting up things evenly over for the allocated hours over the duration of a task. And we're providing detail either by week or by day what a user is assigned to in that particular period. Now, you'll notice while we dig into these here, anything that kind of exceeds either the weekly maximum or daily maximum hours will highlight in red. So this is kind of a resource for you to be able to pop in and say, okay, you know what, I have a user here that's actually over allocated currently. You do have the ability to drill into these here as well. and see where these particular hours are coming from. But at a top level, it's just a way to see what everybody's working on in the agency and where they're at. Now, in the columns themselves, the users and roles will always be split. There's a reason for that. I'll show you here in just a moment. This is, of course, no one's specifically assigned to this account management task that I just added. These users obviously all have specific tasks, again, on active projects. That distinction is pretty important. That, by default, is what we're resourcing. And we'll show the total number of hours a person is assigned to over the time period that we're looking at, their utilization percentage, and the number of remaining hours in that period that we can allocate to them before they're at maximum. Now, of course, some of this requires, some work here just to determine whether or not, it makes sense to apply any more hours. Candace is technically not at 100% allocation, but she is over allocated in the week of 5-6, for example. And this utilization percentage is based off of 40-hour weeks. So it's saying 40-hour max here and a 40-hour max here. That's a good question here from Holly. She's asking why the account management task that has 25 hours assigned only shows 20 hours for this week. And the reason for that is the plan start and complete date for this task. 4 of the days are in this current week here, this task right here. And the other 5 are meant to finish on May 6th. So if we look at the plan start and complete dates for this task, only part of them are in this week. One of them is for next week. So it's, again, cutting this up evenly. It's basically saying 5 hours a day over 5 days. There's 4 days in this week that it'll be working and 1 day next week. That's kind of how that split works out. Again, Workamajig will adjust according to the actuals. So if my account manager only put in 10 hours this week, it would push that to the next week here. You sure can adjust the available hours per week to be less than 40 as well. I'll show you that here in a moment. Let me take you through this and here I'll show you where that option is. But basically what you've set in the settings for this page will determine where your warnings are, and it will also recalculate these fields. So if you set your maximum hours a week to 35, for example, which some agencies like to do to build in breathing room, then that's where the page will provide a warning. Then we're looking at, of course, the number of hours in these weeks here. Now, a note on how things are resourced here. I don't know if I have any meetings on my plate here. I think I do. Oh, I do. Okay, perfect. So we resource 3 major pieces in these breakouts. So when you're looking at these hours, primarily it's typically going to come from project assignments. But it can also come from blocked out meetings on your calendar. So if you're syncing with Google or Outlook, or if you're using Workamajig's calendar, the blockout option or the busy option will actually reflect here as well. Because we don't want to necessarily, give somebody 40 hours worth of work if they have, 5 or 6 hours worth of meetings in that week as well. We basically consider that time when we're providing the detail on the staff schedule for you. So when I'm drilling into, the 14 hours I have here in this first week or the 22 hours I have in the second week, we'll see both the projects. So that will be its own heading here. It'll say, hey, these are the 3 projects currently that I'm on the team of, and these are the tasks that are on that project. Then from there, it will also show my meetings. So any meetings that I have for that week that are marked as block off in the calendar will also resource here as well. So that detail comes through for you. And you actually have the ability to make some changes from here as well. So in the instance of Candace, for example, if I click into this field here and see that 42 hours, I can say, okay, you know what, she's actually over allocated. We might want to get her a little bit of help in this week here. Or maybe we could just cancel one of these meetings. Oh, she doesn't have one. So, so I can say, let me grab this pre-production task here, for example. And, another one here, let's grab this production task. And I can actually reassign or add additional users to these tasks. Now, from the reassign here, this is actually going to take this task and assign it to another user. So if I click that option here, it will slide out a panel that will let me select who that person would be. I can send them an email because we can say, you know what, Candace was a little overbooked here. We're actually splitting some of our work out here to you. Let's go ahead and send them an email that will actually have a link to these tasks here in the system as well. And this remove from project if possible option is a little bit confusing for me at first when I first started working with this. This says that if it's the last task that Candace is assigned to on this project, then go ahead and remove her from the team of the project as well. That's typically for visibility and just ease of use reasons. If she's looking at her projects page, it will just kind of drop that one off so she's not seeing something she's not actually working on anymore. But this drop down will have all of the users in your agency. I can grab somebody and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and pass these over to me here, for example. I'm going to go ahead and send myself an email and go ahead and save this, and it will reassign these tasks for you from this page. The Add to Tasks option will allow you to split the time between two users. So instead of saying I'm going to fully, reassign this task here itself, I'm just going to actually add a person to help out. So we can say, you know what, I'm going to add Daniel to this one. He's going to take 2 hours of this one and 4 hours of this one, and let's go ahead and save. And that's kind of a way to balance the workflow or workload between two people if possible. All right, so I had a few questions in here I want to catch up a little bit to. I had somebody ask a question regarding how you make the drill down in here show meetings. There's really no mechanism to turn that on or off. It's just whether or not we have meetings for a user on their calendar. So Candace doesn't have anything currently that's blocked off on her calendar, and that distinction is pretty important. So there's really nothing showing here as resourcing, because that's all we're seeing here is the detail of tasks that have allocations or meetings. The traffic calendar is a separate tool, so we'll be taking a look at that in just a moment here. And Lisa wants to know if I can clarify the roles versus project hours on the last screen. Yeah, so I'm assuming you're talking about this screen right here. Roles are basically looking at anything in an active project that's currently unassigned. So if I dig into this account management role here in particular, I just made the one task. There's a breakout here for users. This is basically highlighting any users that I've said at the employee level provide the account management service. So this top piece is actually just meant to be helpful for you. It's just saying, hey, you've got unassigned account management time on a project, and these are the number of hours per week that all of the users that you've said provide account management as a service have allocated to them currently. So it's just kind of a way for you to say, okay, if I have 20 hours here in this week, looks like everybody is able to handle it, but maybe there's one standout. So I could grab this task and again reassign it from here to that user. And then a question here regarding projects with hard deadlines. What happens when the task push past that date? How do you prevent that from happening? Now, that's really a constraint question. I always tell my clients, as much as possible, leave the constraints to as soon as possible. That's actually the default that you see in your projects. But you do have the ability to set constraints that are hard dates, because you may have, sometimes things need to get to a vendor, or, you just have a hard finish date for a task. It has to start or it has to finish on this date. We have constraints in your projects that will actually let you do that. And again, I typically would recommend to my clients at least to not change those dates for anything that, unless it qualifies for that. I have to get something to the vendor and it has to be done by this date. So a must start on or a must finish on constraint, for example, will basically lock that task here. Let me just quickly show you that here. This constraint option here. So everything's set to as soon as possible by default in Workamajig. Again, I would just strongly recommend you leave tasks set to that wherever possible. But if you do run into something, let's say this new task one is something due to my printer by the 15th of May, I can say, you know what, this task must finish on the 15th of May. And I can say, okay, it's a 5-day duration. So Workamajig will still give you a plan start and complete date for the task. It's just going to count backwards from your constraint date, and it will not move that date ever, even if the task is late. It will just throw you a warning on your Project Manager Today page that your task is behind schedule. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and yeah, let's go ahead and catch up here a teeny bit more. So a couple more here. I have a question regarding how reassigning a task impacts your budget. It really doesn't. The budget remains the same because it's typically done at a service level and not for a user. So unless you're using something a little bit different, like a task in person style budgeting, it's not really going to matter, how that affects the gross budget for your projects. Okay. Oh, thank you for letting me know I'm cutting out here. Let me see if I can just run in here, adjust my headset. I think that may be it. So, so a couple of other notes here on the staff schedule as well. We looked at the drill down. We looked at reassigning these tasks. I mentioned at the top level here too, you have the ability to separate between users and role. Users at the top don't necessarily have these icons. This is kind of the dead giveaway that you have something that is currently unassigned on an active project. And what this option does here is actually shows you a task card for any of the tasks that apply to that. So you can actually look at this here and see, if I had multiple tasks, of course, they'd all manifest as this card that you see here. You can actually click and drag these to assign them to a user that's on the staff schedule here. So it's a way to say, okay, if I'm looking at account management in particular here, and you can actually filter down to this level as well, let's go ahead and drag this task and assign it to Princess Leia over here. And you can go ahead and make that assignment immediately here. It will show you the impact of the hourly allocation change as soon as you enter that task or drop it over here. And any of your unassigned tasks will always have that option here. So regarding a Google Calendar sync and getting those meetings to show up here on the staff schedule, as soon as the sync is in place, the only thing that we require before a meeting resources, and let me pop over to my calendar here real quick. I don't have much on it, just a couple of test meetings here, but this blockout option that you see here is what actually tells Workamajig to resource a meeting on the staff schedule. So if they come over from Google as busy, I believe is what it's marked at on that side, then you will see it here in Workamajig, so long as that blockout option is selected. So it does sync over from the calendar sync, and that's true of Outlook syncs as well. So if you're syncing Outlook to Workamajig, and in truth, typically that's why I ask my clients to sync. It's handy to have your calendar details in Workamajig, but I normally tell my clients to just continue working whatever calendar they've worked with before. That tends to be easiest. But for the sync, we often want to have that so that we can resource the detail here in the system for you. We do have sync features with iCal. You may need to reach out to your account manager for that. There's some specific instructions we can send to you from our help guide for those. Okay, so a few other options here on the staff schedule here as well. The options wheel up here is actually where you see the filters that can be applied to the staff schedule. So you can filter to a specific service, for example, which will pull up only users that have this service set at the employee level. You can look at a specific user if you're really drilling down, offices or departments if you use those in your instance, any specific team. You can look at projects for a specific client. There's a whole bunch of options in here. Of course, you don't have to use all or any of these. That's up to you. But I did get some questions about adjusting the total number of hours that we use for these calculations, or kind of the maximum ceiling hours that you're looking for. And that's here in the maximum week or daily hours. So again, we have both a weekly and a daily view, and I could change this, for example, to 25 hours, and that will impact what you see here. First of all, anything that exceeds that amount, of course, is going to show up in red as just a visual indicator that something's over allocated what we're trying to shoot for a weekly allocation. And you can also do it at a daily level as well. So, again, not overly uncommon for agencies to say, I'm going to build some breathing room in here. We'll set it to 35, and then we'll set this to 7. How you manage that is up to you, but the defaults are for a 40-hour week and an 8-hour day. And then your projects, of course, I mentioned this a few times, but active projects are what we're looking at by default in the screen. You can actually pull in selected statuses as well. So for example, if you're looking to resource the detail of some opportunity projects that you're setting up, or just some things in the pipeline, and you want to kind of see how that would work here after you've started to schedule them, you can come in here in selected statuses and say, I do want to see my jobs in production, but also my opportunity projects as well. Please pull those into the resourcing screen. So those are the options that you have there. You can also print this page if you run traffic meetings. You want a hard copy of it. This actually can pull to Excel or a PDF if you'd like. And I mentioned the day view as well here. Typically, I prefer to try to stay on the week if at all possible. If you can resource daily, of course, you'll kind of see how that breaks out from a day-to-day if you'd like. And the drill downs for this are similar. It's just kind of showing you more daily task details. If you click into it, it will show you for this particular day, 4:30. These are the tasks that I have assigned to me. And this is the number of hours per day that they're resourcing. So you can kind of still look at those, and you can still access the details of those tasks directly out of these drill downs as well. Okay, so I'm going to answer a couple of questions here and then go ahead and move on to the next screen. There is a question here regarding Office 365. Yes, that's considered Outlook too, so you can sync Office 365 into Workamajig. We do have some guides in our help guide for that, for how to set that up. You cannot update the maximum number of hours for an individual just yet. That's something that we've discussed, but I don't know that we have solid plans to add that for the future. So currently, it's consistent across the agency. You're setting the maximum number of hours for everybody. And so we've got some questions here regarding scheduling daily users. That may be a little bit easier to work with on the assignment management screen rather than the staff schedule. This is more to kind of look at a project as a whole to see kind of who's available to work, some of those bigger tasks. Assignment management really looks more at a task level, so that might be a better option for you, Sean. And we'll take a look at that here in just a moment. And I have a question here regarding the exclude project meetings feature that we saw in here as well. This is actually excluding any meetings with a direct link inside of Workamajig to a project. So what I mean by that is when you look at the calendar here, if I drill into this weekly traffic rundown meeting, and if I had this linked to a particular project, let's say I linked it to this one, and I linked it to the kickoff meeting, this is kind of to prevent it from double resourcing. So you're saying, hey, this is a blocked off meeting for an hour. That's pulling into the staff schedule, but I also have an allocation on the task itself for an hour. That option that you see on the staff schedule is to say, okay, if it's linked to a project in the way that I just showed you there, just exclude that from the staff schedule, please. And last question here real quick before I move on. I'll try to get to some of these again at the end of the call. I apologize, but we have 2 other modules I'd like to get through here as well. The last question was how to get to the staff schedule. That's here from your main menu underneath the Resource Manager application. It's the first one that you see here. So that's the option that you'll see right here under Resource Manager, and we'll take a look here at the traffic calendar and assignment management screens here as well. Yeah, Amanda, you have a really good question regarding kind of some advanced resourcing features. Just kind of if you know that there's certain heavier workload weeks for a task, for example, that may run for 4 weeks, can you split the hours for that? Or does it run for multiple days? So you can kind of split those out. Again, I would definitely discuss this with your account manager because there's a number of factors here that are in play. But if you have a task that runs multiple weeks, let me see if I have something in here. Yeah. Like this one, it's not much, it's 4 hours in this week, but in 1 hour in this week. But let's say that this task over these 2 weeks was a big one. It was like a 30-hour task. I'm only looking at 2 weeks right now, so that's what we're drilling into. But you can actually change these to say that, the first week is actually kind of a lighter week. We typically only work 10 hours in that week, well, let's say, and that second week will be 20 hours. So it's still 30 hours allocated, but I've kind of determined how I want this to resource. Now, again, this is definitely something I would probably follow up with your account manager on because there are implications for this. We basically put a manual resourcing flag on this at this point. You'll actually see at the task level, it will say buckets manually adjusted, which basically just means that you have changed the task. You've kind of told us that, hey, I know there's 30 hours over, this 2-week period, but I want to tell you how the system should resource this. Don't use the manual or the automatic resourcing. So from this point, we will never change these hourly allocations. It basically kind of falls in your purview to update this if there's any changes, which is often fine. But again, there's a number of factors there. So I would definitely follow up with that on with your account manager. But you can kind of dictate that for any tasks that run multiple weeks. You can set the hourly buckets, as we call them, to whatever you'd like. Okay. Yeah, and so so let's go ahead and take a look at the assignment management screen here just for the next one. Now, a note on this screen, for a lot of users, there's actually a specific security piece around accessing the screen in general, and that is turned off by default. There's some reasons for this, but primarily because it's a kind of a separate workflow. So assignment management itself, I think, is a very useful tool. It tends to be one that I think agencies with a lot of quick turnaround tasks would revolve to. So where the staff schedule is really more concerned about the total number of hours that someone's allocated over, a period of time. The assignment management is concerned with those things, but it's largely more concerned with what tasks a user has and the status for those tasks. And again, there's a workflow for this that's specific to the Creatives Today page. And I typically train this to be used in conjunction. So that's part of the reason there's security wrapped around this in general. And some of you users may not be able to see this here. But the way this screen works here is a week-to-week look at all of the users in your agency and the tasks that they're assigned to. So when you come here first, it's going to show you a list of options really for the filters that you'd like to look at. So again, you can say, you know what, I want to look at mine are called test, but let's say I want to look at my design department, or you know, whichever one that it is here. I want to look at a specific user or to a specific service, or you can just click search and it's going to pull open everybody. The way this works here is it's going to give you a list of all of the users in your agency. And then it's going to give you the tasks for those users in various columns underneath them. So I've defined a few extras here, priority item and in review. For now, I'm going to collapse those so that this will kind of match closer to what the default is. But basically what this is doing is it's giving you a snapshot of a week, and this can't be adjusted. It is always week to week. And so it's looking for any task that has a planned start or a planned complete date in that week, or just basically has any activity that needs to be performed on it. So your longer term tasks will appear in here as well. But right now I've got Candace assigned to 4 tasks this week here, and they'll all kind of bucket in this work to be done area. So that's kind of where it starts. Every new task we assign is automatically going to come into the first column here. We can define a default, and work to be done is that default. Underneath the user, when we click on them here, you can also see per day their allocation totals. And on the right-hand side here, it might be a teeny bit difficult to see on the screen share here, but there's kind of a total allocation timeline that comes up here as well. So this is green right now, but as you get closer to a full 40-hour week, this will turn either yellow or red, depending on if someone is over-allocated. So when you're looking at the individual tasks that you can assign, or that a user is assigned to, you can, just like your staff schedule, actually click into these, and you'll notice they actually look very similar to the cards that your creatives have on their Today page. That's actually by design. We're going to pop over there in just a moment here. I'm actually going to open up a separate tab for that, and we'll jump over there. But it actually kind of allows you, just the same as a creative would, to jump into either, you know, various parts of the project. So if you want to jump into the schedule, or you want to look at the project dashboard, you can actually do that directly from this page in the same way that a creative would. The checkbox here allows you to set a percentage complete for them. So, you know, if you know they're about halfway finished, for example, you can update that here at this level. The only major difference here between a creative's task card and what you see on this page as a resource or a traffic manager or a project manager is the ability to click this traffic comments area here and actually apply a comment directly to the card. Now I'm going to do this to one of mine so we can kind of see how this works, but let's say we've got something that's a priority item or something that needs to get out quickly here. Let's say, you know, more than just do this today, like the column, let's say like I want to define that, do this by 2 p.m., for example. And I can actually print that directly to the card. I can put some other stuff on here too. I'm going to extend this down a teeny bit just to make it a teeny bit more visible. Oh, it formatted it in a line, but that's okay. You know, we can kind of pass a note directly on the card to the user themselves. And then you'll also notice within these statuses, I could grab something and as a resource manager say, okay, for Daniel, he's got these 4 tasks. Let's say that I want him to work on this one today. I'm going to pass that note about finishing this by 2 p.m. I also want him to work on this one, and maybe he'll get a chance to work on these 2, but these are what I want him to work on today. And the way this page is designed to work is in conjunction with a specific view on the Creatives Today page. Now, this is also turned off by default. So again, if you haven't seen this here before, that's perfectly fine. This is normally something that I'm going to show for clients as a specific workflow item. So this is the default view. This is probably the one most of your creatives use, the Today Creatives page. There's that card. You can notice that even if I'm not using that specific trafficking view, the tile view, that works in conjunction with assignment management, we can still see those comments here. But if I click over here to this option, and again, this does need to be turned on, we'll see exactly the same format that's seen on the resourcing pages here. So, you know, this is really the ability for either a resource manager to dictate kind of specifically what a creative needs to work on for the week or for the day, even if you want to get down to that level. As well as having the creative, giving the creative the ability to provide that information on their own side too. Maybe, you know, the only one that I've selected here as a resource manager was this one. I came in and went, hey, Daniel needs to get this out today, and preferably by 2 p.m. So I passed the detail on that card. I slid that over to the Do This Today column, but it also works on the creative side. Now you can turn this off, but you can also give your users the ability to say, okay, you know what, after I do this one, I'm going to work on this task and then this one. And that's going to appear visible on both sides. So if the creative moves this and I come in here as the resource manager, I can see that exact same structure. It's kind of a nice way to just get an idea of what everyone's specifically working on. And again, for some agencies, I show this tool to. They work longer term tasks and they go, this looks like a nightmare. I don't want to do this. And others go, this is kind of a blessing. If you have, again, the quick turnaround tasks or kind of the ability to get down to that level where you're communicating specifically kind of which items you'd prefer them to work on rather than just having a due date assess those, this screen really shines for that. Now, so, you know, that kind of passes them back and forth. Again, your creatives, another one of the things that they tend to like from this page is when they mark something as complete. Again, we can either slide this over to this column, or if I just mark it as 100% complete through the card itself, it'll live here. But on the traditional card view, when something's marked as complete, it kind of clears off the page. On the tile view, it'll actually remain here in this week. So you can always look on, you know, either this page or your assignment management page to see specifically which tasks were completed in which week-long period. This will always live here. And the same thing on the assignment management screen. Well, of course, it will clear out next week when we start, you know, next Monday, it won't be here. It will only show you the tasks completed in that week, but it's the same thing from the assignment management screen. You know, if I go back a week or forward a week, I'll always be able to see which tasks specifically were moved into that column in that week. So, you know, that's kind of the main design for the screen, is the ability to pass information back and forth as a resource or as a creative. You know, we can kind of see those two things together. We can pass notes on these particular tasks. You can also move these tiles to other users as well. So, you know, again, if I came in and say, oh, you know what, Daniel's actually out here today, and he's got this task that really does need to go out. Let's go ahead and grab this and assign this to, you know, Candace. I can go ahead and click and drop it, and you, of course, can see what her availability looks like. So maybe not Candace. Let's look at Joe Schmo over here. He's not working on anything. So I can just slide and move the card right over here, and it will make that assignment for me. You may have noticed here too, while I'm working through this, this page does not live refresh. It's true as of the moment that you open it up, but you can always refresh with this option here. Okay, so a few other notes on the page here. In and of itself, you'll see assign work over here. This is for any unassigned work, again, within the time period that we're looking at. So I don't have anything unassigned. I should have probably left that account management task there, but you'll just have to use your imagination from now. This works the same. We would have a task card here that can be dragged to a user. You can apply filters on specifically what you're looking at, either here or through the rest of this page. And then you can kind of make those assignments there. Looking at a user, again, you can click into either the user themselves, or actually can click on the dates here. So if I click on Thursday, for example, it will highlight the tasks in blue for anything that's due or anything that's making up this 2.5 hours we see underneath my name there. Again, I hope that kind of comes through on the screen share here for you. And this screen itself is customizable. So again, there's security wrapped around it. You would need the security rights to add this page. I believe it's Traffic Assignment Management Review screen in the security settings if you're an admin. But once you have access to it, you have a number of options for how you apply this. So filter options themselves are just what you want to see. Again, I can filter out people and say, I only want to see people from my test 1 department or my design department. That will pop up for you when you open the page. But you can also edit the assignment statuses or these options here. So again, I've collapsed this down to the defaults, which is work to be done, do this today, and completed. But if you edit assignment statuses, you can add or change these around. First of all, you can name the columns themselves, so you can insert rows if you want additional column statuses. If I highlight over any of these, I can delete priority item or in review, for example, the ones that I've made. And you'll see a default % complete here as well. This is largely typically used for completed, because this is basically saying anytime a task is moved into the completed column, please mark it as 100% complete currently. Then the is default is which tasks, if you define a new task and you assign me to it, it's going to go into work to be done by default. It's just going to throw them all there, and then it's going to let you work out what you want to do from them or for them from there. And then within specific security groups, you can actually customize the columns that you see for those groups as well. So your account managers can have a different view from accounting, which can have a different view from the company defaults of everybody else. Then underneath the system settings, this is also where you can adjust a few of the other options for this as well. So just like your staff schedule, you have the ability to adjust the maximum number of daily hours, the warning threshold for the number of hours in a day, so 5 here, or the critical threshold that will give a red status bar. If this is left to 0, then it basically won't use one. I believe I saw a question in chat a little bit ago about whether or not you can see completed predecessors only on this page or not. That is a factor here. You can toggle this to either show or hide those. If you show tasks with incomplete predecessors, it will, just like your Today Creatives page, show you kind of a red, mine are all ready to work here, but it will show you a red calendar underneath them that will show you that the predecessors are not complete. Unfortunately, all of mine are ready to go here, but oh, you know what? Let's remove that option, completed predecessors only. There you go. That's what it looks like if a task isn't ready to work. That's true on both pages. So whether it's here or on your assignment management page, it will show you that little red icon that lets you know if the predecessors for a task are not completed just yet. So number of other options here. You can shorthand the tiles too. So if you have a lot of users in your agency and this is kind of a little bit wide and not as functional, you can use shorthand tiles that will show you the initials for a user and kind of stack them vertically. This just kind of makes this screen a little bit easier to read when you're looking either agency-wide or into a big department, for example. So let me take a few questions on this page and then I'll kind of recap it here in just a moment. Now, again, this page is really primarily concerned with the tasks for a specific week. So you can't adjust the timeline. You can look to the future, next week or the previous week, or you can just pick a date in a future week and it will show you that week-long run, but it's always going to show the detail of a specific week in here. Is there a way to search tasks within this page? There's not currently the way you can search unassigned work if you're looking for something specific to assign to somebody, but you can't search all of the users for a specific task just yet. And then Sean wants to know, is the work to be done column list show just what's assigned to that user or anything unassigned in the role that that user falls into? This work to be done column is specific to the user that I'm looking at currently. Any unassigned work will be over here on the left-hand side. And again, I can filter that down. So if I wanted to say, we removed the, I could type account management in here, for example, that would work as well. But this is always unassigned work. If I click on somebody, everything I see is going to be work to be done for them, things that have been specifically assigned to that person. And then moving the tiles to do this today doesn't actually have any effect on the actual schedule. Again, you can set what each status does to a task. So if I take this task and drop it into completed, it will update it to 100%. It will give it an actual complete date. It will clear the predecessor if I'm the only person assigned to it. But these are really meant to be more of, functional between user and resource before that point. There's no impact to the schedule by moving something to do this today. That's just your way of letting the user know that you'd like them to turn that around today. I got a question about adding buckets to this page. You can't really adjust buckets for tasks here like you can on the staff schedule. That's more of a function of that particular page. However, you can click the task itself and edit the details for it. So if I click into it, it'll pull my schedule up. I can adjust this task. Or again, I can pop into it here and just make those changes. Oh, it's taking me to the schedule proper. So I could, click into it and make some changes from here, but no way to adjust the buckets. That's a staff schedule option. I have a question here too about where the traffic comments live within a project. That's again, these comments right here when you're applying them to a task card. That's a really good question. They're actually down at the assignment level. So when I look at the schedule for this one, let me put something here. Put a traffic comment in there. Looking at the schedule for this and looking at the task drill down, when you pop into the assigned column, it's actually here. So it should be in the task details. And you can apply these here too. You don't have to use the assignment management screen to get those sorts of comments on your task cards. You can do it from the actual schedule itself in this traffic comment area. That again, one more time, just for posterity, is clicking into the assigned column for a task. That will show you all of the specific assignments and traffic comments you can apply to them. Maddie asks if there's a way for creatives or designers to add notes to task boxes as well, the same as how a project or resource manager would be able to. Not currently, Maddie, but that is actually a good suggestion for future use for this. I just haven't had too many people ask for it just yet. Regarding plans to make the screen refresh in real time, we don't have any for that, partially because it would make the screen a monster from a resource perspective. It would take a lot longer to pull up and to maintain. It would slow your browser down to a crawl. So I think you'll find when you use it, you don't actually need it to refresh up to the minute as much as you think you do. And again, of course, you can click the refresh button for this. I think we would potentially, I'd have to talk to our engineering team. Maybe we could apply an overall server timer where it looks every 10 or 15 minutes, kind of like what the Creatives Today page does, but I don't think it has that currently. Okay, I'm going to take a couple more here before moving on to the traffic calendar, because again, I want to make sure that we take a look at the whole piece there. But you are able to customize this view. Hopefully the options that I showed you here in system settings will kind of apply to what you were looking for. I'm not sure if you have a more specific question there. Marley's asking if you can assign a task to a non-licensed user. You can to a free user or a client user, but it's going to work a little bit different, and you're not going to see them in the assignment management screen here. That's meant to be more of kind of a one-off. So that would be something they'd see through their client portal. Few other pieces here. How do you set a task status to in review? I actually made this status. It was for a specific client workflow. They kind of have specific tasks that need to go into this step before they can be marked as completed and clear their predecessor. So that would just be a matter of editing your assignment statuses and creating a new status for that, to answer your question there, Cheryl. Okay. A couple of others here. Can the task assignment comments be added to your conversation thread? Not currently. They're kind of meant to be more of a task-specific or resourcing piece here. So no, they don't feed to each other here. In a couple of other pieces here, I just want to note before we move on. Sorry, I know there's a lot of questions in here. I wish I could get to all of them, but I want to make sure we take a look at the traffic calendar as well. This screen itself, again, does have security around it. I'm just going to show for any admin level users what that security setting is. If you'd like to add it for your traffic or project managers, that security setting here is traffic assignment management screen. There's actually two of these. So I normally just look at assignment in here, but this is the one that would give a specific security group access to view that screen. Of course, admins can see it, but if you want your traffic or resource managers to be able to access this screen, that's the right to add for them. Or if you're a traffic or a resource manager, that is the right to ask for. And then the creative side, I didn't go too far into the tile view for this. This is something that's turned off by default. You do need to turn it on as an admin in your system settings. If you scroll down a bit, you'll see show card view, show grid view, show tile view. For a lot of my agencies using the tile view, they turn the other two off. They simply train their creatives that this is how you use Workamajig. This is how you manage your tasks in Workamajig. You don't have to do that. Of course, I just find it a bit more functional because there is nowhere else in the system where you will see these task statuses. They are specific to this tile screen and specific to the assignment management screen. Oh, I'm on Today Creatives on both now. So I just wanted to note that for both of these screens. It does help certain agencies to kind of mandate that this is the view that you would operate with, and that would be how you would train your creatives to use Workamajig or to use the screen in general. Definitely follow up with your account manager if you're interested in this screen. It's really great. I really like it, but it is kind of a specific workflow, a little bit off of the standard of what we would typically train you. That being said, even if you're not using the tile view, this is something that you can definitely get a use from. Again, of course, you can reassign tasks here. You can pass task comments down to cards, even if you're not using the tile view. So don't rule it out if you don't want to use that kind of Kanban style there for the task statuses. Still a useful resource there. Now let's jump into the traffic calendar here. The traffic calendar itself is a bit more of a macro view for what's going on in the agency. So where the staff schedule is more concerned with kind of hourly allocations per week or day, and the assignment management screen is more concerned with tasks and their statuses, the traffic calendar is a big step back. And it's the ability to kind of take a look at everything that's going on in the agency at a project and client level from a bird's eye and drill down to whatever level that you'd like to. I'm going to pop in here. You're going to notice a whole lot of options here. Out the gates, and if you click show more, there's even more. I wouldn't let this intimidate you. This is just a whole lot of options that you have for how specific you want to get with these views. So if I scale this back, even without selecting any of the options in here, Workamajig by default on the traffic calendar will display you tasks that are in progress this month. It'll group them by client, and it's basically kind of go from that point. Show me everything that's going on in the agency. So I'm kind of, using this as a way, I've kind of scaled mine back, but if I click search, there's really two sides to this. The first is a grid-based view that will start relatively top level. I've decided to group it by client. So I've got a whole lot of projects that are in process here that have task dates for this month. It looks like some of mine that have marked as completed, for example, are popping into here. So let me scale this back, actually. We're going to just look at projects that are in production for now, just to make this a little bit easier to see from the grid side. There we go. I've only got 3 projects in production in my test site right now. It's a slow time of year for us here in the test site here. So when you look at this, it will show you, hey, I have this first client here, Acme. They've got this first project, and then another client has 2 other projects associated with them, and it really starts top level. So you're likely going to see more projects in here than I have currently in my test site. It might look a little bit like my first poll here. I've scaled this back to make this a little bit easier to read, but you're basically getting a grid-based report for each project, client, and project that's in the system. And again, if you come back to the top level here, you can change the grouping for this. So you can say, I'd rather it group by campaign or project type or project status, for example, account manager. Those are all viable options that my agencies will use. But I'm going to look at it from a client level here for now. And the grid side of this report here will allow you to get down to the depth, whatever depth that you'd like to for this particular project. So for Acme Incorporated here, for example, if I want to look at this project, I can click on the caret for it, and it will open up each one of the tasks associated with it. And let me get ones that have completed predecessors. There we go, just to get some more detail. Incomplete tasks, uncompleted tasks. There we go. Just trying to get some more detail into these. Looks like it's kind of popping them down. So it's kind of showing where I am specifically currently with these particular projects. It's not showing my incomplete predecessors here for some reason, but we'll go ahead and I'm sure I'm missing something silly here when I'm setting this up. But so apologies for that. But typically it would kind of show you the full timeline for your task in here or for your projects in here. It wouldn't necessarily only show the tasks that are up and next. And so it kind of show you the full timeline for these, and you can kind of view them as a whole. So you can choose whether or not you want to see projects or tasks that have been marked as completed. So you can look through and see that, these were the plans and actuals for these particular projects. You can adjust the columns to show you the percentage complete or the number of budget or actual hours. These are all things I like to pull in here. And again, I was kind of bad and didn't really budget any hours for these projects. But if you had, we can look at those. You can also look at allocated versus actuals. Those are all adjustable in your system settings. You can determine what you want to see in the grid here. And this is a printable page. And one of the things I like about it is when you print this, it will print to the level of detail that you have currently displayed. So if there's a couple of projects in particular that you're interested in or you want to show the detail of, you can do that and simply just print the detail for those projects. You can pop them open in the grid and then go ahead and print this guy out here. It can also be pulled into Excel the same way. That's kind of different from pretty much every other report in our system. If you have a grouping, it will typically show you all of the detail that pulls into the report, even if it displays differently when you collapse things in Workamajig. This traffic calendar doesn't do that. It's one of the, I think, the strengths of it here. So quite a bit of flexibility to change the columns that you see in here. If you're kind of a grid-based person like me, this screen is really great. There's a lot of detail to it. Again, you have a number of different options you have that you can look at here for pulling these in here. Completed predecessor. Well, no, let's take that off here again. Look at the mass again, just to get a look at some of these bigger timeline pieces. But that's kind of one side for this. The other side is there's actually a calendar view that can be associated with this as well. So if you're more of a visual person and you want to see kind of the timelines for specific tasks here, there's also a calendar side to these after you pull this report. And when you take a look at that here, you have some options again in your system settings for how this looks. So for for you, understandably, these pages can get really busy really fast. So you have a number of options here in the checkboxes to basically determine how you want this to work. So you can say, you know what, first of all, I want to view projects on the calendar view. Second of all, do I want to look at summary tasks or the bolded roll-up tasks in your projects? Do I want to see the detail tasks? So you can kind of enter that level of detail here. And it will also show you the timeline. So it'll show you, hey, here's a concepting phase. It runs for this long on this project number. Can kind of adjust those, whether you see project number or project name or both. You can adjust that here too to have it show the actual project names. And then, considering how busy it can get, depending on the number of different projects or tasks you pull into here, you can tell the system basically to say, you know what, only show me the end date. So if I have something with a planned complete date of the 19th, that's what I want to see. I don't want to see the full timeline running through here. And you can do that as well. That tends to kind of clean these pieces up a little bit and make them a little bit easier to read there. So number of different options that can be applied to this here. Again, it's really pulling from the same data pool as the grid side. It's just giving you a visual representation. So mine's a little bit goofy. I haven't pulled in everything from all of these projects here, which you would typically see and you'd want to see on the traffic calendar. But you can do that and you can show it on a traffic calendar as well. So, those are the options in that system settings. Again, here, this is where you can determine, first of all, the columns. This edit columns allows you to edit the details of the traffic columns that you see here. And the options you see below it here allow you to pick and choose how you want the calendar view for this to work. And beyond that, traffic calendars can be saved as well. This one's saying unsaved calendar, the very attractive name of unsaved calendar here. And there's a Gantt here too. I forgot to mention that, but you can pop one out just like your project Gantts and look at that from this side here as well. But your calendars can actually be saved and published from here too. So I have a number of test published calendars I've created over here. There's really two reasons for this. The first of which is to save any specific settings you have here on, any specific filters you've applied to your traffic calendar in general. So, if you have a search you do pretty repeatedly for a specific account manager or a group of account managers, or you want it, grouped this way, or you only want to look at projects in the status, whatever it is, you can save that and not have to select those options every time. So if I select publish here, I can say, this is my newest test, we'll call this one. We can set the visibility level for this. I'll get into that in just a moment, and it will save these options here. So if I leave this screen and go somewhere else, I come back, it's always going to go back to this very same first options when you pull this open. But I could say, let me grab my newest test, and it will remember those options that I'd selected for the search. So it's one way to just kind of lock in something that you'd want to run for a traffic meeting, or just in general, there's something that you'd like to use as a resource on a repeated basis. The other side of it is, those visible to options here. And these, you'll notice these familiar calendar display options that we saw in system settings when we ran this in the first place. This kind of gives you the ability to publish a specific calendar that users can put on their Workamajig calendar. So mine doesn't have much, this newest test currently. There's only a couple of different lines in the schedule calendar. Let me expand this. We'll take away the show and dates only. We'll actually expand it to give it some more detail here. And when I run back to my calendar as a user, those security settings dictate who can, on their Workamajig calendar, jump into their display options. Let me get the default view out of here and add a published calendar. So when they go down and they select more calendars to view here at this level, they can actually grab that very same newest test published calendar I had and pull that to their Workamajig calendar. Let's change it from this lovely brown to a blue color or something like that. There we go. That's a lot better looking. So you can actually pull that detail here, or let your users pull the detail here to their Workamajig calendar. A lot of our users asked for this, and so this is something that we provided here, and it kind of allows you as a resource or a project manager to curate the data that would be seen in those, and kind of control that, and then say, okay, now that I'm happy with how my traffic calendar looks, I'll go ahead and publish it, and I will give my creative team, the rights to view this, maybe not my clients. So you can kind of dictate which users by security group would be able to view this calendar, in their stat or in their Workamajig calendar here, and they can go ahead and add it just like they would anything else. It would display, and we could kind of toggle it on or off with the legend. So All right, so didn't leave a ton of time for questions here on the traffic calendar. I really apologize for that. Of course, you're more than welcome to send your questions in here to support@workamajig.com if you have anything specific that you wanted to follow up on. But I want to be respectful of everyone's time here and not necessarily run over. I'm going to take questions for about another 5 minutes here since we kind of butted up towards the end. But of course, if you have to go, you have to go. No problem. Now. Let me just kind of grab a few questions here from the traffic calendar side. Traffic calendars, there's a question here regarding rolling dates. I'm assuming you mean for the task dates themselves. Right now, the task dates, you actually can set a custom, and there is some options for things like last month. There's not really any things for last fiscal quarter or anything like that, but you can kind of say next month, last month, or you can apply custom date ranges, and you can come in here and define what you'd like to see. So you can do that as well. It's just kind of, we simplify it and just say this month by default. There's a question here regarding plans to give the ability to group by designer or user. There's not really plans to do that from this page because this is really meant to be a bird's eye view. So it's really going to be more summary detail like grouping by client or parent client or campaign or project type, kind of big groups of projects themselves, and you can kind of drill into them. But you can see if you, I mean, this isn't really a page for specific user assignments. It's meant to be more of a bird's eye, but you can see in that assigned column, I've got one pulled out here. Maybe I pulled a bad one. Let me go ahead and refresh real quick. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and reload. But you can actually see one of the options that you have for columns in this is assigned. And so when I pop these open, it will show you not only the task, but also the initials of the person that's assigned to it. That may help a little bit, but really this isn't necessarily meant to be a screen for individual user assignments. You can see that detail there, but it doesn't necessarily group that way. Okay, and a question here from Mandy regarding generic tasks at the beginning of your schedules that last for the duration of projects for our project managers and some others. Is there a way to leave those out of these calculations? There is a way to leave them out, but it's also going to be based off the scheduling. If you have the schedule task option selected for it, then it will pull into here. If you don't, it won't. That's something you can see in the task details at a project level. And a question from Demi here, how does this show on your Today Creatives page now? This detail doesn't. It's actually meant to be, you know, at first blush, the traffic calendar is meant to be a resource for, you know, administrative or project level users, executive level users to kind of get a bird's eye view of what's happening in the agency. It's not really something you pass to the creatives. Their interaction with this page would be specifically only to the calendar level. And we're looking for milestones in the calendar view within the traffic calendar, but not see it in the Gantt views. I don't know, Casey, we'd have to look at that one specifically, I think. That might be more of a troubleshooting question. So we might need you to send over the details of your search parameters and we can kind of look at it from there. And then the question of how do you edit the order of the column display in the traffic calendar view? When you pull the traffic calendar, again, you have the option here, once you're at the grid side, to jump into more and go into system settings. Your edit columns options here up at the top. So this is where you can define first the columns that you'd like to display. There's a number of them here. You can kind of see all the options. And once you've made the selection from the menu here, you can go to the display order and kind of slide these around. So this goes from top to bottom, left to right on the grid. Tasks is kind of permanent and fixed, but everything else will format after that from left to right. Plan, start, complete, and percentage will format in that way here. You got it. And is there a legend for what the different colors in the calendar mean? We actually apply these automatically for you, Sean, to try to just differentiate the different project types. So it's kind of like, and I'm not sure if you've worked with deliverables, but we kind of apply an automatic color to every user making comments, just so you can see that, oh, you know what, Deborah's green and, you know, and Bob is red, and just to kind of make it easier when you're looking at all the annotations as a whole. It's kind of the same thing here on the calendar side. Since you're grouping by client, we try to give you a different color per client, just to let you know visually to make it see, oh, okay, that makes sense. These blue projects are all for this AGST client of mine. It will change according to your grouping, but we do it automatically for you. Okay, perfect. Well, I just want to say thanks to everybody that attended this session here today. There's a lot to our resourcing tools. I think that they're some of the best and most powerful tools that we have in Workamajig, so I can't encourage you enough to start diving into those and taking advantage of them. Wouldn't be shy about reaching out to your account manager if you have any follow-up questions. You can reach out at support@workamajig.com. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions you have, or if you'd like to do kind of a specific guided session, kind of more along your workflow, that's also possible as well. So thank you all for coming here, and I hope you guys have a great day.